Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I am joined by MattYoung. Matt was born and raised in Cross Lanes, West Virginia, and graduated from Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky, with a history and philosophy double major. He worked in sales and business development out of college with a quick print company and an internet startup before moving to New York, where he lived from 2000 to 2006, working for a software company. Matt returned to West Virginia in 2006, and even though he once thought he'd never return to West Virginia, now you could not drag him away from his home state. He makes his living as a certified financial planner with his own firm, Horizon Financial, where he specializes in values investing, which is providing investment and planning advice that align with biblical values. Matt is also the head coach of Genesis Running, and since 2007 has helped over 3,500 people in West Virginia learn to run and kickstart an active and healthy lifestyle. He has served with several organizations that focus on the health and wellness of West Virginians, including West Virginia on the Move, West Virginia Mountain Trail Runners, and the Meeks Mountain Trail Alliance, where he serves as the treasurer and is the co-chair of the events committee, which hosts the Hurricane Crush Run and West Virginia's first ever 100K trail run and relay, the Hurricane 100K. Matt and his wife, Anne Marie, celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary this year, and they have two children, Caroline, who will be 15, and Charlie, who is 11. MattYoung, welcome to the show.
Laura, thank you. Boy, that was a mouthful. I mean, do we have to stop this now? That was
I'm
kind
sorry,
of
we're
long,
out of
wasn't it?
time.
Yeah, I know
Conversation
it was
ever.
too much.
No, I am super excited. So one of our very, very popular guests on the show, Greg Clutter, introduced me to you and said, you have to have Matt on this show. And it was right before, I think, the 100K was kicking off. He said, you got to have him on. You got to talk about him. So I am very excited to talk with you today.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you too, and I still have a hard time believing that Greg said that about me. I mean, he's never said anything good. So, but I guess we'll start with that. But I tell you, I know this is your show, okay?
Uh-huh.
But I've got some questions for you.
Okay. All right. I'm
I'm
game.
gonna flip the script a little bit, and this is a test I'm gonna give you, Laura, just to see if we can be friends. Okay.
Okay. All right.
So, and I've got a series, and these are either ors. You don't think about them, you just answer, okay? And at the
Oh.
end, I'll tell you if you got enough right answers that we can be friends. You ready?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Cabin or cruise?
Cabin.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Drama or comedy?
Comedy.
Summer or winter?
Summer, 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 and more summer.
City or country?
Country.
Halloween or Easter?
Easter.
Cake or pie?
Oh, cake.
Beach or lake?
Ooh, beach. Close tie, though.
Contemporary or traditional?
Traditional.
Finally, Jay-Z or Sinatra?
Sinatra. Although I do like me
Dang.
some Jay-Z.
Well, your first answer is what counts, and I can't tell you how many that you got right. And that's part of, like, there's no right. It is a right or wrong. Okay, as far
It
as I'm
is.
concerned,
Right.
there's really only one that you
Is it the
missed.
cats versus dogs?
No, gosh, no. No, it's not. It's dogs all the way.
Dogs all
I'm
the
not
way.
allowed to tell you. So when I give this again, we can't give the insight. But no,
Oh,
there's only one.
okay.
And so that means that, you and I have a strong chance to, be friends for a long period of time.
We
I
could
mean,
be
so I'm
friends.
pretty excited about this. I think this is going to go well.
Me too. And I'm super glad that I passed whatever the test was, because this would be a really awkward interview if you said no.
Well, we could still be, I mean, we can still do the interview. It just means
Acquaintances.
we can't spend time outside of this. That's it. That's all.
Exactly. Okay. Well, if you saw how I'd run, you may say, forget it. But we'll get into that. I like that. I noticed that you've done podcast interviews and you've interviewed runners, and I noticed that you do a quick round at the beginning, it looks like, of your interviews, and I do a lightning round at the end, which I didn't tell you about either.
Yes. I've done that a few times, and I think it's pretty cool to do. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna do the lightning round at the end. But first, we do have other things to talk about. So I the purpose of this podcast is really to look at different examples of leadership, talking to different leaders from different walks of life who show up in different ways as leaders. And so I'm excited to talk to you today because I know you have such a history of leadership and I feel like you can give such great examples. And I really don't even know where to start with you other than perhaps maybe if you could just share a little bit about your leadership journey and how you've shown up as a leader throughout your life thus far.
Yeah, what's funny is, and I heard Greg say this too. And when it comes to leadership, like I hear that and I go, am I really a leader, or is it reluctant? And so I thought about this, knowing that we're going to do this, and so I kind of came up with a definition. I hope this is not too corny, but I'm trying to use this really as a way to kind of describe it. And so, more than the leader, here's how I would describe myself. I'm an action oriented connector with a strong sense of purpose and right and wrong.
Ooh, I like that.
So I'm going to say it again. I'm an action oriented connector with a strong sense of purpose and right and wrong.
Ooh.
And that can be good and it can be bad. And so especially the strong sense of purpose and the right or wrong, because you'll notice that when I asked you those questions, I told you that they were right or wrong. It's not a preference. It's either you're right or you're wrong,
Right.
because that's my take on it. You're either right or you're wrong on these things, because
Yeah.
you either align with me or you don't. And I'm
Uh-huh.
exaggerating
Yeah.
on that too, but really more than anything else, with that strong sense of purpose, I'd say typically the reason that I've kind of come into roles is, and this has to do more with my personality, is if I see things like, part of my strong sense of purpose is I want to leave the world a better place.
Mm,
And that's not, it doesn't mean to be cliched. And so, because the things, like, you'll notice, like, even in the bio, everything that I get involved in, it all has a purpose. It's essentially, it's a cause.
mhm,
And so when I see things that need, I don't know, that need help, or that I think could be better or improved, or there's a hole, I tend to step in and try to find a solution, especially if it's in my wheelhouse. And if you notice, most of that is within, part of it is my work
mhm,
in my planning business, but also a lot of it is around health and wellness. And it is definitely needed here in West Virginia. When I lived in New York, I went in and told my partner there, that I worked in the business with, and I said, "Hey, I'm heading back to West Virginia." He was kind of shocked, because it is kind of like, you escape West Virginia, you don't go back. And I was there, and it, had a moderate amount of success. And so, the next day he brought in an article from the New York Times, and this was back in 2006. And somewhere in it, I think it was towards the front, it was far enough up that he read it, and it said, the city of Charleston, West Virginia, is the most unhealthy city in America for men.
mhm,
And I think Huntington at that time was maybe for all people. And you've probably heard that stat. And I
mhm,
don't know where we stand in it now, but he knew at that time that I was involved in, kind of health and wellness stuff. I did triathlons, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. He said, "Man, you really have your work cut out for you." And I was like, wow, I mean, I guess so. But at that time, I really didn't know it. But, shortly after I got back here in 2007, I actually, in 2006, I watched my dad, who was 64 years old at the time. He asked me, he said, we went and did a 5K, and, he basically walked it and then ran the last quarter of a mile. There's a whole longer story that goes with this. But he was excited. He was a runner when I was a kid, but he'd never really done anything, for like 20 years. His knees
mhm,
started hurting and he just quit. And so at 64, he asked me if I could help him get ready to run the 4 mile leg of the Charleston distance run relay. And it was 9 weeks away. And I thought to myself, no way, old man, can you do this? I mean, I watched him struggle to run a quarter of a mile, but, I didn't want to dash his hopes and dreams. So I said, man, I'll give it, we'll give it a shot and we'll see how it goes. And so I found this training plan called the Couch to 5K at that time. And it was
mhm,
great. It was a little bit of running, 30 seconds of running or 60 seconds of running, 90 seconds of walking. You alternate that, do it a total of 20 minutes. And you do that 3 times a week. And each week you run a little bit more and you walk a little bit less. Then to 9 weeks, you do 30 minutes straight. And I said, look, we'll get you to 30 minutes. And then on race day, you're just going to have to gut out the rest. And so I watched this 64-year-old man that hadn't run in 20 years go from barely being able to run a quarter mile to doing a 4 mile leg of the Charleston distance run in 9 weeks. I said, if it works for him, it can work for anybody. And
Yeah.
so the next year I started in my church, really kind of a ministry. We had 12 people do it and it worked again. And then it just went on from there. Now we've had 3,500 people because and the point of that is it's something that's needed here. There's nobody else that's doing it. Well, there is now maybe a handful of pockets, nothing that's lasted for 15 years like ours has. But I saw need and I had the ability to do it. So, just did it and put it in place. And so much of my leadership has come from, if you call it that, from just helping people,
Mhm.
to make a difference in their lives. And I mean, it does. You'd think like, what's the big deal about a 5K? But it starts people off on a path that they thought was impossible at some point, and then they start to ask themselves questions all the time, like, if I can do this, what else can I do? And we've seen people lose 100 pounds, getting off blood pressure medication, triglycerides. I mean, you name it, their lives have completely changed, restored relationships, healing from losing family members. I mean, it's amazing what happens, bringing the body under discipline of the mind and the mind under the discipline of the spirit, just by moving, and encouragement that goes with that. So that's just kind of an example. It's needed here and
Yeah.
nobody else is doing it. So I did it. And I can, that's kind of the way I get involved in things.
But that, I mean, I think that's a beautiful definition of leadership because you're right. It's kind of like how, you identify a need, you identify a gap, and how can I step in and help out? And to me, a lot of leadership is about initiative and adding value and creating opportunities for other people to have success. And that's what you're doing with all kinds of work that you're doing, right? Your day job, your maybe after hours job, however you want to position it, but especially with the work that you're doing in Genesis Running too. That's incredible because you're providing great opportunities. And I always think about ripple effect, the ripple effect of that. If these people are healthier in any aspect of their life, what's the spillover to other areas of their life where they might have greater success?
Oh, it is never, and this is one of the things we say, it's never just about the run,
Mm.
because what it does is exactly right. It goes into every other aspect of their life. They start to apply the same principles and discipline to their relationships, to their work, to their child rearing. I mean, their finances, everywhere. I had a lady one time, we've got this mantra, it's easy start, strong finish, which means start the race easy, because so many people take off in a 5K like they've been shot out of a cannon. I mean, and then within a quarter mile, they're walking or they're struggling, like, why did I train for all this time? And now I can't even run, a mile. It's because they start too fast. So this mantra, easy start, strong finish. And the lady told me later, she said, that even works for cleaning the house. I didn't want to. I said, well, let me just vacuum this room. He says,
Hmm.
so I started vacuuming the room. Before you know it, in an hour, I was done. And the same things apply. So that's a very, just easy example of let's just get started. Let's take a step and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. That's amazing, and I feel like you probably interact with a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life too through that organization. You said over 3,500 people, right, have learned how to
Have gone
run
through.
and gone through the program. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
there is, and it's and it has, and so, and they've taken it, other places. I mean, one of the things that I was telling my friend this morning, I was spending some time with, and we were on a run too. I said, one of the things that's probably the best, most rewarding part, not only all the finishes and people have changed their lives. So we've got classes going on right now, and I'm not teaching any of them. But we've had over a dozen coaches that have come and gone, been certified, and have led and coached, too. Before the pandemic, we were running 7 different locations, throughout the state, and so it gives other people an opportunity to step in that maybe aren't going to put something like this together themselves, but are certainly equipped to coach and to lead and give them the opportunity, that ministry output as well.
That's so cool. Yeah, I noticed that. I was on your Genesis Running website and I saw all the different locations represented and I thought, "Oh, this is really cool. This isn't just like Matt doing this on his own. There's other coaches out there that are running something similar." And I love that you brought up Couch to 5K because when I was reading about Genesis Running, that's exactly what I was envisioning was like, "Oh, this is like a real person live version of a Couch to 5K or some training program like that.
It is. And so we took the training, which is one thing. It's one thing to see it on paper, but
Mhm.
what we've done that makes it successful is, we put everything else around it. Everything I've learned, in 20 plus years and in coaching, not only myself personally, but also in coaching. Where do people fall off? Where do they struggle? And how do we fill that gap for them? Our completion ratio or percentage now is well over 80%. The people that sign up on week one and pay for the class,
Yeah.
they make it to the finish, but they're to the start line. 100% that make it to the start line make the finish. We don't lose people on the course once they're out there. So, and to be able to put that kind of percentage around it too is something that's been worked on. And I learn stuff every year about ways to improve it, even if it's nothing else. It's my communication, learning new things of experience, and how do I make this make sense to people? Because there's one thing to know it, you got to get people to understand and then to come along, which is, kind of another thing when it comes to, to the leadership definition. I don't want to get too far ahead here, but that's more of it rather than, kind of follow me. It's like, hey, I've got this idea.
Mhm.
Will you come along with me?
Yeah.
And you have other people that do, and they come along with you, and you're just kind of saying, I'm leading capable people that are well equipped in and of themselves, but we're doing this thing together, which is really what's happening at Meeks too.
Mhm.
And that's more of it. What I would rather do is that I've got this thing, I've got this idea, or there's this need. Kind of here's a vision for it. Will you come along with me? And people do it, and they're capable in and of themselves.
That's so cool. Talk a little bit, you just mentioned Meeks. So Meeks Mountain Trail Alliance, talk a little bit about that and what that is, because there's some I've seen pictures of you actually building running trails, which I never
Yeah,
even thought about that as like a thing people could do.
yeah. No, for sure is. And so it's funny, even today I got a text from a friend of mine. So live here in Hurricane that I've been running on this mountain. It's the Meeks family that owns the property.
Okay.
And its property is basically got old logging roads, utilities, two pipelines that run through it. And so it's been used mainly for hunting property. And I have a friend, his name's Harry Silvas, that introduced me to these trails way back in 2006. He and I've been running them forever, really just kind of like, with loose permission to do it, but making our own ways, mainly running pipelines and things. And so he sent me a message today, said he's moved away now. I said, I've just watched some videos on Meeks. I cannot believe what's going on there and how we got started running those trails. And so at the end of 2018, it fell by the name of Brandon Dorner. The city of Hurricane and the Meeks family got together. The Meeks family said, look, we're going to make this property available to you. The city of Hurricane leased it. And then Brandon and his daughter went up for the first time and just said, we're going to start building some trails. And some people told me that there were some trails being built. And I thought, yeah, whatever. There's like these Mickey Mouse trails that are gravel. It's not the kind of like real trails,
Right.
because to do something with city property, you think it'd have to be, there's nothing against this, don't get me wrong, but ADA compliant, but it doesn't lend itself then to the type of running we like to do.
Mhm.
And so after a while, enough people telling me, I said, well, I'll go check it out. And I went up and I was like, no, these are cool trails. And at that point, there was only maybe 2 miles, 2.5 miles. And we say build trails, Laura, think about standing in the woods, looking through it, and brush and briars and down trees and leaves and everything, and then saying, we're going to take a path through that.
Yeah.
And so to build trails, Brandon would go up and he charts out a course and works on lines, and he's a mountain biker. I'm a runner, and so we have a good mix of this, but lays it out. And then basically you go through, and there's people that go through and rake, they go through and trim, they take out the trees, and then bench work with these big hefty things called a hoe. And where it might be on a hillside, you cut into the hillside and make it, flat enough, not exactly flat, but to where, you can actually move on that. And that's building trail. And you want to know something crazy, like we've built 24 miles of trails now on Meeks Mountain. And if you were to do that commercially, so if you were to say pick a piece of property and say, okay, we want to build some trails, there are companies out there that will do it, and you get a bid for that, it's going to come back at $10 a foot.
Whoa.
ten
And you
dollars a
have
foot.
what,
So
24 miles right now?
and we have do the math on that. It's
Uh,
$1.3 million investment that has been done, all with volunteers and on a shoestring, primarily
wow.
people donating their own equipment, from the hose, and we break those things all the time, have to be
Mhm.
replaced. Chainsaws, whatever. Now we put an organization now and we've raised some money, but for the biggest part of that, has been done with just volunteer dollars, hours. 450 individuals have contributed. Over 14,000 hours have gone into it. And it was with this one guy that went up on the hillside and said, I'm going to start with my daughter building some trails. And that's how
Wow.
all of this has gotten rolling. So now with 24 miles of trails, we have people coming all over, from hours around just to ride these trails. Mountain bikers especially will travel for trails. And so they've been coming in from all over to do it. But it's really been just a tremendous, community effort. I didn't start this thing. I heard about it and I was like, well, if I'm going to run on these things, I better help them build. I mean, that's
Yeah.
so kind of going back to the cause thing too. It's like, I see it, I recognize what you're doing. And so February of 2020, I showed up for the first time. There were 7 people on that build and just started working. And because look, if I'm going to use it, I'm going to help with it. And it just kind of went from there too.
Wow. It's so cool because when I listen to you tell that story, I think about there's this author, his name is Dan Pink, and he's written a lot of different books, but he wrote a book about motivation and it's called Drive. And he talks about kind of the main things that motivate people, generally speaking, and it's autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose. And he gives examples of how people spend hours and hours of their time doing things that they don't get paid for. Because, a lot of times you hear money is what
Yes.
motivates people, right? And he's like, no, I can give you example after example of people who spend hours working on things that they get zero compensation for. And this is such a perfect real world example of that. I mean, these are people who are just donating, and this is not easy work either. I mean, it's not like I'm just learning, how to play the guitar and I'm just kind of chilling out. This is physical labor that they're doing for the love of it. I mean,
Oh,
would you say that's kind of what that drives them to do it?
no doubt. No doubt. It starts for the love of it. And a lot of them are the same way. It's like, I'm using the trails, I'm going to help. And then when
Mhm.
they get out there, like there'll be some weeks where we'll have 30 people showing up, and there are friendships and there are bonds that have been created. And that, it's friendship often comes through, through tough times and all shared adversity.
Mhm.
And this isn't adversity, but it is hard. It's hard work. I
It
mean,
is.
there's nothing easy about the work that goes into that. And so you have friendships now, like when we're done building these trails, we're gonna look at them and go, what in the world are some of these people going to do? Well, they'll be up there using the trails together too. And we have a ton of maintenance and sustainability in it as well. But no, it is so far from money. In fact, it's the exact opposite. We have several, I mean, in their trails, Brandon is genius in this too. Most of the trails are named after people, and it comes after doing at least 100 hours worth of build time and build work. And we have some, Laura, that have over 300 hours of work
Wow.
up there. 300 hours of doing it, and they're just doing it because they want to, because they love it. And also, so many times, we are, I don't know about you, but I spend majority of my day at a desk, and I will tell you that I'm not made for that. I don't think God
Mhm.
makes us for this sedentary lifestyle that we
Yep.
have gotten. We're not made for the comfort. I mean, in the United States, we spend so much time doing everything we can to increase our comfort and decrease our discomfort and
Yes.
adversity. I mean, it's like we will spend tons of time and tons of money to make our lives easier, and all it does is make it worse. If you ask me, it just
Mm.
makes it worse. We are
Yeah.
made to get out into work, and so when you spend all day in an office, there's nothing more I want to do than I love to go out and weed eat. I love to do the work, and there are so many people that are that way, but that is part of their lives that they are not getting fulfilled, and this is a way to do it.
Yeah, and you're getting out in nature too, which I think is another important component of that too. For many, many people, that is very restorative. It helps with their stress management, burnout, all these things we are hearing a lot about from just a general wellness perspective, being out in nature. Then you add the physical movement component to it as well. I mean, it checks a lot of boxes.
Sure does.
That's so cool. So, all right, I want to hear more. Was this year the first ever? Is it West Virginia's first ever 100K race?
It is, yeah. The Hurricane 100K was the first 100K in West Virginia. There's going to be another one in Fayetteville, New River Gorge, this spring in April, and they're doing great things over there too. Rim to River Endurance Company, my friend Brian Bakers, has 3 great races, bringing people in all over to showcase West Virginia again. So there is going to be another one, but this was the first in West Virginia, was the Hurricane 100K on September 10th this past year.
Okay, I need more details on this. Like where did this idea come from? What was your role in all of it? I know you had a big role, but I need more details on this because this is fascinating to me. And this is
Yes.
we're talking like running 100 kilometers, which is what, like 62 miles?
Your math is good. Yeah. So yeah, I need to add that to my questions. Can you convert miles to kilometers? Because if you can't do that, we can't be friends.
I
So
mean,
you
I may have
can.
been
So
Google assisted on that one. I have to
yeah,
be
yeah, yeah,
truthful.
yeah. Well, just note 6.2 is the conversion. Okay. All right.
Okay, good
So
to know.
or 0.62 is
All
the
right, well then that
conversion.
makes the 100 number a lot easier to convert.
Yeah, it is. It is 10K, 6.2 miles. So you've got it now. Now you can be a math wizard and impress your friends and
Mhm.
family at all the parties you have. So, so kind of what happened is, with the trails too, tell you that we believe that these trails, and when I say we, again, there's MMTA, Mixed Mountain Trail Alliance. We have a board of directors. Brandon heads that up. I'm the co-chair of the events committee and the treasurer.
Mhm.
But we also and so there are 11 of us on that board. And so when I say we, this is our organization. It's also the city of Hurricane and the mayor, Scott Edwards, extremely supportive, the Meeks family. We want these trails to be both an economic and a wellness driver for our area.
Cool. Cool. I like how
And
you
I'll
can
tell
do
you,
both.
you can do both. And really to do it, these trails lend themselves to both of those. And I keep saying this to people, and I might have mentioned to you on our first phone call, but West Virginia, we kind of get stuck in this thing um, about tourism, and we
Mhm.
want to bring people in to showcase our state. And so you think about the gorge and whitewater rafting and all the places. And so, and you bring them in, that's fine. You bring them in for some weekend dollars. Maybe they come 2, 3, 4 times a year. That's great. But what we really want here is we want people to come and live here. We want
Yes.
them, we want all their dollars in our communities, that they can come in and say, if we're going to move to what we want to move to West Virginia, when we do, we want to be in Hurricane, we want to be in Putnam County.
Mhm.
And so we are really using these as both an economic and a wellness driver. Yes, we want to bring them in for the weekends, and that's what the races are partly for, and to showcase our trails. We really want them to live here, because part of that intro is, I left West Virginia. I never thought I would come back.
Yeah.
And now, again, you could not drag me away. There was so much. And again, going back to the purpose and the cause, and I tell all the young people this, I said, look, if you're leaving the state because you see a void, or you see something that, that is somewhere else that's not here, and if you don't like it, then stay and do something about it.
Yes.
Especially
Yes. Don't just
if
leave it.
Don't leave it. If you are equipped and you are talented, come back and do something about it. You would be so much more fulfilled than just going and using, is the coming and making it happen and bringing it to other people. It will be so much better for you and so much more fulfilling to make a difference in that too. And so with these trails, and look, I said, we're building these trails that showcase, and we started out with our Hurricane Crush Run. It was more of a community event. It's a half marathon and 5K on the trails. And then the question is, how do we bring people in to the trails to showcase it and get them to stay? And so, we'd never, and I love long distance running, and I do believe that, the longer the race, the further people will travel. I've traveled to all the way out west for 100Ks. My wife and I will do some of that, really just to, as getaways, but that's kind of what we do for fun. It's sick,
Sure.
really, isn't it? I mean,
I mean, I'm
but
more familiar with people that do like the Disney Princess Half Marathon, but this is similar,
yeah, it's
but
similar.
not.
So you've got the glitter and you have the dirt. All right. So
Yes.
the glitters is the Disney. That's not me. But
Uh-huh.
let's just get dirty and dusty on this side. Okay. So that's the only difference. One's dealing with dirt, one's dealing with
And one's
glitter.
a heck of a lot longer and harder, by the way. Let's add that in too.
Well, so we said, and we came up with a few ideas, and then finally I said, look, we've the 100K, never had a 100K in West Virginia. And Brandon comes from the mountain bike side, which they typically do prize money. and there's not a single race in West Virginia, there not anymore, not that I know of, somebody can call me out on this, but that also has prize money. So we said, let's do a race that we've never seen before in its distance in West Virginia, the first ever, and let's offer a prize purse of $7,500 to try and bring people in for this too. And because the idea is that, with this, with the 100K, to give you an idea, we had an 18-hour time limit on it. Started at 6 in the morning, had to be done by midnight.
Mm,
So if you're going to come in from out of town for that, again, travel to it, then you're going to have to come spend Friday night because you're going to be a 6 o'clock start.
right.
And then most likely, if you're finishing up in the evening, you're not going to drive home that night. So we're talking 2 nights of a stay, in addition to having hotels and gas and food and all that. And most of the time when you have an event like this, there is, and this is kind of, if you've never done it before, for every runner they typically bring two people with them, because you can have a crew that as you're coming through aid stations, they can help you out. They can give you fresh bottles, bags, help you change your clothes, shoes, socks. You do that a lot in these races. And then there's a pacer. Pacer is somebody that could go out the last 20 miles and really just keep you company. Part of it is for safety, to make sure they stay on course.
Mhm.
If something does happen to them, they've got somebody there with them. And so when you travel for these, a lot of times you'll bring two people. So it's not just the one runner we get two people to come with them. And so now we've got three people coming in for this. And so we had a lot of local people too. We have people from 6 states that came in. It's our first year. We got to get the word out. Hurricane, West Virginia is not known as as a distance running place.
Right.
And so really that was not only to bring them in, but we said when they come here, we are going to roll out the red carpet for them. We want them to know that when they come to Hurricane, West Virginia, and we did a welcome to Hurricane video just to kind of showcase our town and what we have to offer. We want them to know that they are welcome, that they're appreciated, and that they're loved. That when they get here, we want to roll out the red carpet and let them know that we're glad that they're here. I've gone to races before, and it's like they're doing a favor by letting me be there. And
Wow.
we did not want that to be the case. You come here, and so it's not just the runner. We had all kinds of stuff for families. The Hurricane Spray Park was open up free. We had paddle boarding for them, bluegrass music going throughout the day, free pizza. We brought in ice cream. We had a campfire with s'mores that were rolling to the kids. And the way that this place is set up, and I know we had some pictures with it too, was it was set up to where they could see the runners every 10 miles. And so families were there just hanging out and having a good time. Who wanted it to be where not only the runners enjoy it, but the families would say, "Hey, Dad," or "Hey, Mom, we're going back to Hurricane next year
Yeah.
because we had so much fun. You have to run it. We're going back."
Oh, yeah, because I'm assuming I mean, they don't do this just once a year, right? So they're starting to get comparison points of we've gone here, we've gone there, and hey, that was a really cool experience, and we want to go back there.
That's right. That's exactly right. So
Oh,
we're
that's
yeah, we're in competition like for everything else in dollars. We want to try and set ourselves apart and just do everything that we could, for these runners and for their families to, just to make it a fun, enjoyable time. And so it kind of so back to our our build team. And when you talked about the motivation, so it takes a lot of volunteers to do an event like this. We had over 40 volunteers, and
wow.
so many of them came from our build team. So not only are they up building trails, but they were volunteering and doing a number of things. And what was so interesting, Laura, is to say when we kind of cast this vision of rolling out the red carpet, and these are our trails.
Hmm.
This is our home, and these are our trails. And so our build team, all of our volunteers that have built and that use these trails, it was like they were saying to the runners, "Welcome to our home."
Yeah,
And they
literally, like,
showed,
welcome to our living room.
"Welcome to," and just like you would if somebody came to your house, you show them
Hmm.
hospitality. "What can I do for you? What can I
Hmm.
get you? I'm so glad that you're here. Make yourselves at home." And it was that feeling all day long because our build team that put so much into it, they say, "We love these trails. We love the sweat and tears we put into them. We know it's good. We want everybody else to know what we know."
Mm, that's amazing. There's so many things that you have said that I feel like there's so much crossover to the workplace, honestly, when you think about what type of an experience you should want your employees to feel when they come in the door, right? Everything back from what you talked about with building the trails as well, of how committed those everybody is to those trails because they've put in, the blood, sweat, and tears. They're a part of building something together. And I think even in a workplace context of, gosh, how much more committed and engaged would people be if they really felt like they were a part of the building process and that they knew the fruits of their labor would really pay off in such a meaningful way, not only for each other, but even for themselves, they get that benefit too.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, and that goes back to this, this sense of purpose and purpose driven. If you
Mhm.
can communicate that to them, then, you may not touch everybody, but you just need to get, especially those in leadership. And I'll tell you, going back to just about anything, so back to, like a definition of leadership is, every organization, and I'll say this, and I give kudos to Brandon. Brandon heads this thing up, and so he is of the Meeks Mountain Trail Alliance. He's the leader. He's on our events committee too, but he's the leader. And so the organization has taken on his character and his personality.
Mm.
And and I believe the same thing is that every organization takes on the character and the personality of their leader, and it goes
Yeah.
down through. So when you have somebody up top that you cannot outwork him, he sets the pace for this, and he will never ask you to do. I read a book a long time ago. It's Richard Marchenko and Leadership Secrets of the Rogue Warrior. It's kind of interesting, but he was a Navy SEAL, and what I got from that is that as a leader, I'm never going to ask you to do something that I haven't already done or I'm not willing to do. And
Absolutely.
so if you want them to smile and be kind, you have to smile and be kind.
Mhm.
If you want them to work, if you want them to know that the customer is the most important thing, then, show them that and demonstrate it in and of yourself. And so this organization has taken on Brandon, and because Brandon is so good, you know, and it's not just me, it's other leaders that are strong in their own rights have come along, and it's the same thing as like, hey, I'm doing this, who wants to come with me? And 450 people at one point have said, I'll come along, I love it, and I'll keep
Wow.
going with you.
That is so cool. The other thing I think about with this conversation, a lot of times when we talk about leadership, we focus a lot, myself included, on, the boss type relationship of like I am leading you, another person. But there's so much self-leadership that goes into this topic and this thought as well around just what does it mean to lead myself effectively? And when I think about especially this long distance running in particular. I've never gone anywhere close to this distance, and I'd love for you to even break it down because I'd imagine, probably a lot of the listeners have not quite been able to go to this distance that you have either, but I think about the type of self-leadership that's required, the mindset that's required. I mean, could you share just some thoughts on that aspect of it?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, what's so cool about this sport is there are very talented people, and we have those in West Virginia. Let me put this in perspective. Alex Miner was our winner, and
Okay.
overall, he
Good
ran
job,
this.
Alex.
I know. Tell me about it. So we've got a podcast, and you'll have to watch that.
Yeah.
Um, 8 hours and 38 minutes.
Okay, so
Okay.
I gotta ask
Let-
kind of
let-
a silly question here, but is that continuous running or do you stop?
no, he didn't stop. There's no
Wow.
resting, there's no sleeping. He stops to fill up water bottles, to get some food. He changes shoes and socks once. That's an 8:20 pace
Oh my
for
gosh.
62 miles. And this is trail. So we are up and down 9,000 feet of elevation change, rocks, roots, mud. And we took them up on our ridge, back down the other side. And then again, I've designed this course to be tough, but not overly difficult. Our
Mhm.
first lady was 9 hours and 30 minutes. Holly Ann Swan, she had a goal of not walking a single step, and she didn't do it.
Wow.
62 miles.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
there are extremely talented people. We have some here in West Virginia. Caleb Bowen was second place. He just set a course record at a 100 miler this weekend. And we have some extremely talented people here. But what is so cool about it too is they were 8. Our last finisher was 20 hours and 38 minutes.
Hmm.
And when you watch this, there is nobody that falls in that 8.5 to 20.5 that isn't impressive, that are all dealing with their same issues. Because one of the things that was so cool to me when I found out about these races, I went to the starting line and I said, I was with my dad and a friend that was, hey, come from New York to run a race in West Virginia. I had no idea it was even there. It was right next to this camp, race called Highland Skies. He said, why don't you just come out and watch? And I said, sure. So 6 o'clock in the morning, I roll out there in this primitive remote spot. And I go, what in the world is going on here? They're like all ages, shapes, and sizes, men, women, from young to old, some that don't look like runners. They don't have the typical runner's body, but all you have to do is move
Wow.
consistently and get these things done. And that it is such an effort in, in endurance, physically, mentally, the fortitude that goes into that. It is a never cease, never surrender, or attitude that goes into it, just to will yourself to the finish. It takes athletic ability and training. When it comes down to it, it is a battle of the mind to continue to do it. And that is what's so fun and so hard about it at the same time, and that anybody can do with proper time and training.
And I love that message. Anyone can do it. And I love how you said, it doesn't matter so much whether you do it in 8 hours or 20 hours, you're still talented. I mean, the fact that you can even attempt something like that, let alone finish it, speaks to your level of talent and character, I think, as well.
Well, the human body is really very amazing. Going back to, we're not made to be sedentary. We are made to go long distances, and you can't see it, but there's not a bit of hair on my body. I'm a bald man. I'm a bald man. I say, just a part of it is we are made the way our bodies use fuel
Yeah.
so efficiently, and fat, the way we can store that. And then also, the way we cool ourselves, different than most animals that go in fits and starts and sprints. We're made for endurance, just to grind it out. It's kind of going back to the kind of the hunter gatherer,
Hmm.
that we did years and years ago. But we're made for this. We're made for long distances. People are going to laugh when they hear this, but you see it all the time. People running across the country, running 200 miles, biking across the country, or from Canada to Mexico. Why can they do it and you can't? There's no
Yeah.
reason why, other than the will to want to, and finding an enjoyment in it. And a lot of people love the events, but really, when this hits for you, is when you enjoy the training as much as you do the
Mhm.
events. I told you earlier when we got on, I just spent 5 hours with a friend of mine this morning over in Fayetteville, kind of doing some course recon on a race that we have coming up. And it's just the two of us. And I said to him, I said, John, we were just kind of talking again about, how this works, and especially for men. I'm getting off on a tangent here a little bit, I guess, but men have such a hard time later in lives, not when they're young, but when you get to be adults, of maintaining true friendships,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
other men. And if you're going to do it, it has to be around a shared activity where you can spend some time, not just a lunch or breakfast here and there. It's happens where you can spend real time, where we can't stay on the surface if we're out there for 5 hours. We're talking about real
Everything.
things here. Anything and
Yes.
everything. I have so many friends. Like, we're going to be friends, and I didn't give this to you, but if we're going to be friends, we have to, like real friends, we got to be able to run. Like, most of my good friends are my running friends, except my friends from college. That's just because we have a different bond that was forged, in a
Yeah.
way. But we spend so much time, and it's so good for us. It is so good for us to do with our friends, with the creator in creation. And the benefits that come from that are just endless. But you've got to try it. And you don't have to do long. Just go for a hike. Do 30, 45
Yeah.
minutes on your own. And this is another thing I learned when I was in college, this concept of unencumbered time. And it is so, so important for now. Unencumbered time just means I have time that is not associated with anything else. And with our day and age of smartphones, and with podcasts, and with everything else, how often do you get the time where you have no other distractions other than you're moving,
Mm.
or you're sitting still and quiet, reflective, meditative, so that you can think about things, let new things come into your mind. My best ideas come when I'm on my own, when I've got this unencumbered time, most of the time while I'm moving, because the creative juices are going, the blood is flowing, and all of that comes from, but you've got to have time where you're not dedicated to anything else. And that's that unencumbered time that we just do not get anymore either.
No, you're right, and it takes some time to get into that as well. Because I will say, the furthest distance I've ever gone, I've run a few half marathons in my life, and, the first if I was out doing a run by myself, which normally I would run with other people, which was fantastic, and there's a lot of benefits that come with that, but sometimes I would just go by myself, and I would say the first mile or 2, I was just, kind of distracted or just kind of getting into the groove. But then at some point, things kind of shift for you and you start getting into a rhythm and a groove where you're not really having to think that much about what you're doing. And then your mind just starts to wander. And I think that's where
Yeah.
some really cool things happen. But it's not for me, it wasn't like the first 5 minutes. Like you got to have a little bit of time, to your point, that unencumbered time that you can set aside to really get that value and benefit out of it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And so for this 100K we did, how much, I mean, I spent so much time thinking about it and rolling it over my head from start to finish. I'm fairly detailed, and so it takes that to put these events together,
Hmm.
or to do it well. And I would just think about it. I would think about the different aspects, and I would get ideas. And then when I was with some friends, I'd roll this by them, and I roll them by my wife, and I said, "Let me tell you what I'm thinking. Does this make sense?" And to have that, the ability to do it, so with people that know and understand, and on your own, is absolutely vital, especially if you're going to come up with new and different things too. Great ideas and creativity that comes from just saying, I'm turning off everything else. I'm gonna go noodle on this thing for a while. I reflect on it, I dwell on it, I reflect on it, meditate on it, whatever it is, and good things happen.
Yeah, and I'd love to hear your thoughts because I know a lot of working professionals very, very busy, want to exercise or want to move, want to do something, but oftentimes just other priorities get in the way. For you, I mean, you have your own business and you've got to set aside large blocks of time to do some of these trainings. So how do you go about prioritizing it, making time for it? Any tips there?
Well, I've got a friend from college, and he says, and my nickname was Fatty. Don't ask Fatty if he's seen any movies. He hasn't seen any movies. And so I I mean, I've seen movies, but I don't watch TV. When it's time for bed at night, I go to bed.
Well, you're
Like,
probably
the question
exhausted
is,
mentally and
how
physically.
early? That's right. How early can I go to bed? It's like in the summer. Can I get to bed before the sun goes down? I would love to do that because I get up a little after 4. So if
Yeah.
you're going to make it work, it has got to be in the morning. And it doesn't have to be running. I mean, the studies show that the way to stick with something is to do something that you enjoy. It just so happens that I enjoy running mainly because I get to do it, outside in the woods. But whatever it is, find something that you enjoy, and not only will you stick with it, but then the health benefits come from that too. And it doesn't have to be a lot.
Yeah.
Starting out with 30 minutes 3 times a week, just like I did with my dad, 30 minutes three
Mhm.
times a week. And then you create a habit, 40 days to make a habit, but it's got to be something where you do it because you love it. You do it because you enjoy it. I don't care if it's rollerblading or biking or whatever it is. You still rollerblade, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I tried roller skating again for the first time a while ago, and that
Bad
that did
move.
not, yeah. It turns out that the 12-year-old version of me that was, like, really good at roller skating, those skills, it's not like riding a bike.
No, it's not. So those wheels are way too slick when you get older.
Whoa.
So go
Yes,
ahead and
they
put
are.
those on. I speak from experience as well.
Yes,
So
yeah. But you're
it's
right,
it's
like,
really,
it's what you
go
love.
ahead.
That's why I started it back up because I was like, what did I love to do and thought was really fun when I was a kid? And roller skating. And then
Yeah.
eventually it was rollerblading. But roller skating came to mind and I was like, I'm gonna do this. This was a pandemic idea also. I feel like sometimes, you got to put that qualifier in there. But I thought, I'm gonna do this. I bought really cool pair of roller skates, went out on my driveway, forgot that it's a little bit of a down slope, and next thing you know, I'm, like, hanging off of the side view mirror of my vehicle for life, clinging to it for life.
I'm quietly dying laughing over here because I'm picturing this and thinking, that seems like a great idea, but that's ridiculous.
It was ridiculous.
Maybe
But yeah.
not as much as bombing downhill in the woods on slick mud. I don't know. I mean, is that any
Yeah.
more ridiculous?
Yeah, exactly. But moral of the story, find something you love, find something that actually won't break your bones maybe too. But yeah, find something you love because you will be much more inclined to stick with it, right?
And get to bed early. There's
Yes.
nothing good on TV and movies. It's so much, this stuff is so much better for you. Not to
It's
say you
true.
don't use it for weekends, but
Yeah.
I don't know. What have you learned through watching a sitcom? Nothing. It's mindless,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's just me.
You can do other mindless things and get the health benefits too, which is
Yeah.
huge. So this has been so great. And I just am so intrigued by, all the applications that you can take even just from the experience that you've had with Genesis Running, with the Meeks Mountain Trail Alliance, with being a part of this massive operation of hosting a 100K race. And I guess my last question to you would really be about what opportunities do you see out there for leadership? So similar to how you saw a need, you stepped up, you stepped in, you've kind of, I think, naturally have some gifts there in terms of stepping up and stepping in. But what other opportunities do you see out there where people can apply leadership?
Well, so one of the questions that you gave me, which I think applies to this, which is, what's something that you believed early in your career but think differently about now? And one of those is that leadership is best done from a position of authority. That's what I might have believed a long time ago,
Mm,
but I believe it's the opposite of that now. That any kind of leader, the best leaders I know, come from an implied authority. So, and it's like we said, is that I've got this idea. Um, will you come along with me? It's not that
yeah.
that you're doing this because you have to. When I say position of authority, it's a boss, or
Yes.
it comes from an organization, and you do it because you have to, because that's them. But the best leaders are those that you lead because, or you follow because you want to.
Right.
They're likable. They're the workers that say, it begins and ends with me. That they'll take all the heat but give all the credit. And so a lot of times my best ideas will come from, I've got this great idea. Um, and again, will you do it with me? And it's things like, we do these nighttime tailgate runs, and I'd like to go run in the woods for about a few hours, then come down and eat fried chicken and donuts. Who's with me?
Mm,
And they'll say, yeah. And it's like, what's the next thing you do? You just make that first. When are we going to do it? So
yeah.
it's like taking these small steps of, I've got this idea. I find two, I mean, maybe it's just two other people that agree with you and say, what's it take to get it done? And, it's like, I don't know, this may sound like crazy, but I see where people struggle with this. It's like, so what's it take to get it done? It's like, you name it, you say what it's going to be, you describe it to create
Yeah.
a vision for it. And then you say, when's it going to happen? And if that happens, then what are some of the steps? You don't have to have all the steps. What are a few
Right.
steps that need to take place in order to get that going? And so then it's really, and then you just get to work. And so one of the things that I kind of learned early, and I learned this through a great book called The Traveler's Gift. I read this about 25 years ago. And anyways, this guy named David goes back in history, and he meets all these characters, and they each teach him one lesson. And one of them was Joshua Chamberlain, was the commander of the Gettysburg, or at Gettysburg, of the Union Army.
Mhm.
And Joshua Chamberlain leaves him with this last statement, and he said, "I'm a man of action. I will be a
Mm,
man of action." And so that's when it comes back to him, action oriented, because the Battle of
yes.
Gettysburg was the turning point for the war.
Yes.
And Joshua Chamberlain said their backs were against the wall. And when they ran out of bullets and ammunition and the Confederates came, he said, fix your bayonets and charge. What
Mhm.
he says in the book, which is so fascinating, is he said, look, this is our role, this is our responsibility, and I may die, but I will not die in retreat, and I will not die with a bullet in my back.
Mm,
And and he said, I will be a man of action, even if that
yeah.
action is not the right action, but I will be a man of action. And so not being afraid to make a mistake, or if it's not right, take another action, which is to correct it. So that kind of came in a time in my life when I was early in my career, and I watched some people around me that weren't that way. It's like a lot of talk. And I kind of
Mhm.
said to myself,
No action.
I don't want to be that way. You know, I'll be a man of action. I'll do things.
Oh, I
And
love that.
and so that's it. It doesn't take much other than say, I've got this idea. Will you come with me? And take an action. And an action oftentimes is just one thing to get started.
Yeah, it's just like how you build 24 miles of trail, right? I mean, you probably didn't set out to say this is how many we're going to build right off the bat. That would be really probably overwhelming for people, but like let's just start, let's kind of see where we can take this thing.
A foot of trail, 1 foot of
Yeah.
trail. You don't get 24 miles done without 1 foot to start with.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Oh, this has been so great. I just really appreciate the time that you've taken to have this conversation. And I'll wrap here by saying anything that we haven't covered that you wanted to talk about or wanted to get in there.
No, I think we're good. I think people would be tired of me by the time this is done.
No, maybe. So let's see. We could encourage people to maybe go for a walk and listen to this
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah,
That'd
that's
be
right. Get
a
out
good
and do
little
it.
step. Yeah.
We do say, and I'll tell when we do our classes, a lot of time we do them 6 p.m. And it's the same for me. I exercise in the morning because so many things get in the way later in
Yes.
the day. So do it early. But I do encourage them. I say, look, you will never finish a workout and say, man, I wish I hadn't done that. You will
So
always
true.
feel better. You will
Yeah.
always feel better. And if you don't believe it, please just try it.
Yeah.
Go for a walk in the sunshine and see if it doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't have to be much. Do 20 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
20, 30 minutes and see if you don't feel better. Just
Oh,
give it a
so
shot.
true. That's so true. I love it. You're making me want to go for a run. So thank you
Let's
for
do it.
that inspiration. All right, can we wrap with you started us off with a rapid fire, but can I wrap with a rapid fire of my own for you?
Let's do it.
Okay, this is 60 seconds to answer as many of these open-ended questions as you can. All right. Okay, on your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Ball.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
Thumbs up.
What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
We'll say that Traveler's Gift.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to check that out. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
I'm an introvert.
Mm-hmm. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on.
Running shoes.
Yeah, those are not cheap. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Mel Gibson.
Oh,
Or Vin
excellent.
Diesel.
Another good choice. If you catch me by the fridge at night, I'm probably sneaking.
Something sweet,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
don't blame me there. Best place you've traveled to?
Belize.
Nice. First job?
Hardee's.
Hardee's. I love it. Really goes with the wellness theme.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been wonderful, Matt. Thank you so much for your time today.
Laura, you're welcome. Thank you. This has been fun. I hope everybody enjoys it.
Yep, it's been awesome. And I'll close this out here. Thanks to everyone who's taken the time to listen to Leadership Rediscovered today. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.